watching Vision 2025. This interview will explore how generative AI is reshaping the way businesses and individuals operate, create, and learn. Unlike traditional AI, which focuses on optimization and data analysis, generative AI introduces groundbreaking capabilities that create entirely new content, processes, and solutions. This discussion will touch on real-world use cases, including campaign creation, employee training, and innovative study methods, emphasizing how these tools can drive efficiency and productivity. And now joining me for this discussion is Sherlock Holmes, yes, that's his real name, the founder of Genware in the Americas and co-founder of Data Shack in the UK and Genware Shack in South Africa. Sherlock, thanks very much for joining us once again.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
What is generative AI? I think perhaps explain to us exactly what it is and how does it allow us to interact with or through technology in ways that allows it to be like almost as natural as speaking with another human being.
Exactly, Gary. So generative AI is a subset of AI, right? It took a lot of AI to produce generative AI. And when you read about this and you hear about it, you're going to hear about things like large language models on which this is based. But generative AI at its core is there to produce content, and that content could be textual, it could be visual like images, it can even produce videos and audio, it can translate between different languages as an instance. But to me, think of it this way, I look at generative AI as my best collaborative partner, whether that may be a muse with whom I can ideate and exchange ideas, whether that is a coach that's helping me to learn something, or possibly even just share with me great ideas on what I'm busy doing, all the way through to a personal assistant that can help actually conduct and do activities for me. What makes this technology so great and so groundbreaking is the fact that we can interact with it the way that we have a conversation. So just like you and I are having a conversation, I interact with generative AI in the exact same way. I write or I speak to it just as I do any language, and in many cases it's multilingual. And from that, it not only answers and does what I need it to do, but it can actually create new ideas and generate content that becomes thought-provoking.
Okay, so who should use generative AI then?
Right, so that's a great question, because this has become a technology that is going to be used by everybody in their personal capacity as well as in the business capacity. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. So in my personal capacity, I recently moved to a nice home in Knysna, and one of the things I found was all of a sudden I need furniture. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know the town, I'm new to the town, but I've got this house, I've got a couple of bedrooms. So I used generative AI. I went in and I said, listen, here's my situation. I just bought a house, I'm a new homeowner, I have 3 bedrooms, I have 2 rooms that are open, and I need to create a plan and a shopping list for furniture. Now, of course, I've only got a budget of a certain amount, so here's what the budget is. And I used generative AI to create my shopping list. It told me, for instance, here's all the items that you would typically need. Here's a whole lot of optional items that may not be within this month's budget immediately. And then it did another thing. It went and it researched what my town's local stores were. And it said, in the proximity of where you are, here's 2 or 3 stores that will sell these items for you. Oh, and by the way, here's an average price point that you should be looking for to keep everything within your budget. So I used it right there as an assistant that was incredibly knowledgeable, probably taking what would have taken 2 or 3 weeks for me to research and find out and maybe get right or not. It was able to pull these sources together and do it for me in less than an hour. I had a shopping list. So from a personal perspective, I've seen people using this for healthcare plans. I've seen them using it for dietary plans. So let's take it to the next level. And this is where it begins to shine, right? So now we go to work. Now in my professional capacity, I do a certain amount of routine tasks every day. This is where generative AI comes in. So maybe it's about reading through emails and writing responses. I don't know if you've ever had a creative block when you've got to answer a difficult email. Well, it could help me. It could put that email together for me and produce the draft, get me 80% of the way there. I can do repetitive tasks with it, but I can also start using it as a knowledge base for me and answering questions. So just at that professional level, we're seeing productivity improvements happening very rapidly. Now, when we take it to the next level up, let's say I'm a department manager and I'm running a marketing department or I'm running a department, I can start looking at what are these routine areas. And one of the challenges I have is I hire new employees and I need to teach them. They're never going to be as good as the person that's been there for multiple years and knows everything about that particular task that we're performing. So imagine I took that standard operating procedure document and I used that as the source. Now the employee, through a digital assistant, can say, hey, what's the leave policy? Oh, how much leave do I have left? I want to fill in a leave application form for next year, and it does all of this for me. So as a productivity assistant, it now has all the knowledge. A quick example, we launch new products all the time. So at Genware, we launched this concept of a productivity assistant, and we've rolled that out through our global organizations, where these are people that know how to use reporting analytics and generative AI, and they help teams to actually embrace and use this as a productivity enhancer within the context of the business. So for instance, as we started launching this, I took it and said, well, let's create a couple of ideas around what does this mean and what is the purpose behind it. Use generative AI to create that. I then created a series of scripts and I created content, a PDF document, I created a web page, and I took that script and I plugged it into an audio production and I created a script of about 5 minutes that explained what this productivity assistant was. I then took that and I put it into yet another AI tool and I used an avatar and I created this wonderful little video that I've posted on Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media platforms that explains what that was. So that's an example of, I probably took 3 to 4 weeks of creative people's time to put this together. We created something literally in a day that we were able to launch and start sharing with people. That's an example of how just doing a series of routine tasks can be really optimized very quickly using generative AI.
So perhaps give us a quick real-world example of how generative AI can be used. For instance, business people watching now are saying, how do I create and execute a marketing campaign? You have a real experience of this, like not so long ago.
Recently, I did help a customer with looking at how they could do that. So let's do this, right? So the customer was looking at how business, this was a small business that was operating in a local area. They were looking at how do they compete with competitors in the area, but more importantly, how do they deliver the message of what they're serving to their customers? So we go into the first phase, which is ideation. So we can start asking questions. We can start saying things like, I'm launching a new product and a service offering that sits with it. I'd like to understand what are the demographics of the people in my area. Can you go and give me an idea of that? So going through that cycle, I come back with the demographics and I say, this is great, but you know what? I need to produce some content now. So the content I want to produce is maybe I want to post things onto social media. I may want to send a couple of emails. Can you produce 15 emails for me specifically to the demographics that we've identified and explain a little bit about what our product is and give me 3 or 4 different posts that I can put onto social media? Through generative AI, we got 85 to 90% of the content produced in less than an hour. I now had 15 pieces of content that I could deploy. Now it got better than that because I wanted to make sure that the salespeople were familiar with the product. Now the product has got a specification manual. I took the specification manual, I loaded it in, and I created a little digital assistant. The salespeople could now ask questions on the assistant. In this case, it happened to be a vehicle that was being sold. So anything to do with that vehicle, I could now actually, the agent could ask. So if a customer called in about this thing that we've now advertised, and a salesperson picks it up, at their fingertips, they could answer any question accurately to the customer and close that sales cycle. So that's an example of just from ideation to creating content to communicating, to providing education. This is something that we typically launch in maybe 3 to 9 weeks. We were doing this in less than a week, with content produced 80 to 90% of the way along each step.
We're going to have to leave it there, but sounds like AI is going to be part of everything we do every day, everywhere.
Absolutely, Gary.
We're going to have to leave it there. That was Sherlock Holmes, the founder of Genware in the Americas and co-founder of Data Shack in the UK and Genware Shack in South Africa. And you can reach the company on the email listed on the screen. and you're watching Business Day TV. Thanks for being with us.